I'm Sherrod Brown. It's an honor to serve this country and the state of Ohio in the United States Senate. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, longtime friend and colleague, Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin. Uh, we know millions of Americans are frustrated and angry because of President Trump's abysmal failure to get this pandemic under control. What is Trump's answer? What is McConnell's answer? It's not to extend the unemployment insurance. They cut that off from about 1 million people in Wisconsin and Ohio in August. It's not to help people pay their rent and pay their bills. It's not to get more money into our public schools and small businesses. Their answer to the American people is none of that is important. You're on your own. Instead, Trump and McConnell are going to move heaven and earth to get another corporate special interest justice in the Supreme Court, a judge whom we have every reason to believe will take away American health care in the middle of a pandemic. So, Tammy, tell me what the Affordable Care Act meant to the people in Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, let me start with just giving you an update on what's happening during the pandemic in Wisconsin, because much of our state has been labeled a red zone for COVID-19 infections. In fact, we're experiencing the worst outbreak of infections since this pandemic began over 9 months ago. Over the past week, Wisconsin once again hit a single-day record of new cases, and we have infections and hospitalizations and deaths accelerating. And, President Trump has walked away from the negotiating table to pass bipartisan COVID response legislation. But, before and during this pandemic, the Affordable Care Act has provided comprehensive care and guaranteed protections for millions of people, especially those who have pre-existing health conditions. I know both you and I have heard from constituents who have a pre-existing health condition or are parents of a child with a pre-existing health condition. In fact, we listened to some of those stories earlier today, and their stories make it clear what is at stake with Trump's nomination to the Supreme Court and with his failure to negotiate further relief for the American people during this pandemic and economic crisis. So, I think their stories make it clear that it is our duty to protect people's health care and not take it away, as President Trump has been trying to do since day one. And these constituent stories also make it clear that people don't want the Senate to rush through a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court so that President Trump can terminate our health care. And we should be respecting the will of the people. That's the president's duty and Mitch McConnell's duty, too.
And millions of people around the country have already started voting, and we've not even had a hearing on her. That, as Senator Baldwin's right, without the Affordable Care Act, and as she said, we talked to 3 people from each of our states today earlier, we immediately go back to the days when insurance companies were free to charge you rates you could never afford, and then deny you coverage altogether. Protections, no matter what President Trump might say about signing an executive order or something that will be meaningless, protection for tens of millions of families. And in our state combined, we have 700,000 or 800,000 people who have pre-existing conditions. Those people are out of luck. Those protections are gone. And most people, as we know, at some point in their lives, as they grow older, and many when they're young, will have a pre-existing condition, asthma, like my wife Connie has, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression. And now, on top of that, being a COVID-19 survivor is a pre-existing condition to insurance companies. So in a matter of weeks, the court will hear the case pushed by President Trump trying to do, keep in mind that Congress over and over, President Trump and Mitch McConnell tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act, tried to undermine the pre-existing condition consumer protections, and they failed because the public weighed in and said, no, now they want to legislate through the courts. So Timmy, what's at stake for people's lives and people's health care if the Senate confirms the Trump nominee instead of listening to the voters and letting the voters decide? What's that mean?
Well, the stakes are enormous, absolutely enormous. And I think about The fact that the court is scheduled to hear a case on November 10th, 7 days after Election Day, to hear oral arguments on this case that would potentially result in the overturning of the Affordable Care Act in its entirety. And, one of the hard-won protections, of course, was to mandate that insurance companies not discriminate against people with pre-existing health conditions. As you said, between Wisconsin and Ohio, we have 7 to 8 million people who have something that would count as a pre-existing health condition. And yet, this is all happening a couple of weeks before the election because it's an illegitimate process. In my mind, first of all, we have to look back to the last time there was a vacancy in an election year, and Mitch McConnell proclaimed, we don't fill vacancies in election years. We let the voters decide. He did that when President Obama was president and Justice Scalia passed away. But in a duplicitous and, in the height of hypocrisy, he said, oh, well, that rule just applied to a Democratic president. Now we have a Republican president. We're going to ram this through, right? And Trump clearly picked somebody who'd been an outspoken critic of the Affordable Care Act and precisely the decision that was written by Chief Justice Roberts the last time this issue came before the court. So what's at stake is what you're seeing. This president is bound to and determined to try to do what he said he's wanted to do since day one, which is terminate people's health care with no plan at all to protect people once that happens. And we can't let them get away with it. Now, Sherrod, you mentioned the heroic effort to make sure that we didn't legislatively repeal the Affordable Care Act in 2017. And part of the reason that succeeded against all odds was because the people of America told their stories, spoke out, talked about how critical healthcare was. And we need everyone to do that with as much vigor as they possibly can right now. Because we already have 2 Republicans who have said that they will not allow this or not vote for the confirmation to proceed because they think the next president, whoever the voters decide, should make that choice, and the next Senate should make that choice. But we need people to call their senators. We need people to make it crystal clear that they know what's happening right now and that is absolutely unacceptable.
Thank you. And what you just said, Tammy and I were obviously both in the Senate when they tried to repeal it the last time, and it was pretty uphill. We didn't know until the final vote was cast if we were going to beat back. There was a Republican House, a Republican Senate. Every Democrat in both houses wanted to hold on to the Affordable Care Act because we know if you're 25, you can be in your parents' plan. We know about saving the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. We know about the consumer protections for pre-existing condition. We had Medicaid expansion. That was 600,000 in my state. And we knew all that. But even with that, we weren't at all sure we could stop it. So this is a long shot. I mean, there are 2 Republicans so far that say they're going to vote. They're not willing to move forward. We know that unelected judges installed by politicians who take their cues from Wall Street and corporate lobbyists, those unelected judges, if allowed to be confirmed, will do what their corporate sponsors want them to do in far too many cases. And that's why your voice means something. And when we had our call today, Tammy and I did an earlier little program with 3 people from each state, and their stories were so compelling. If I'd said that one one of my favorite Abraham Lincoln stories is he was in the White House. And his staff said, stay in the White House, win the war, free the slaves, preserve the Union. And Lincoln said, no, I got to go out and get my public opinion bath. And I know Tammy Baldwin does that, goes out and listens to people. I don't think that Mitch McConnell and far too many Republican senators, I just don't think they're listening to people. But if you can really put the pressure on and tell them your stories, we can win on this. So Senator Baldwin, thank you for joining us always. Keep up the fight in Wisconsin and nationally. You're a hero to a lot of people. Thanks so much for that. And we'll all keep fighting. Tammy,
Thank
thanks.
you.